Morning.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thanks for
All
checking in
Oh,
with us. Our latest conversations, we're three Black Pratt grads, just talking photography. My name is Kenneth Nelson. I'm here with my good friends Mark Skinner and Greg Cleghorn. We're all graduates of the Fine Art Photography program at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York, as well as have decades of professional photography experience in various sectors of commercial photography. So we bring that to these conversations. Getting straight to the point of this episode, I have a question for you. Have you thought about exercising your creative vision, photographing to where all or most of the photo that you take consists of being white? In photography, we refer to it as high key. I began rethinking about high key uh, earlier this month with this particular image, or this is one of two particular images. And as a matter of course, for me, I don't think about it often because it doesn't occur in my images. But just as a way to exercise some creative thought, when I saw this, I said, yes, high key as a possible series of photographs. Why not? So that got me thinking about bright lights, big picture. And so that's what this is about. This episode is called Bright Light, Big Picture, High Key. And so this is just an idea to stretch our imagination as well as the viewer's imagination as to use this type of photograph on a regular basis instead of a special basis when it's actually needed. So with that, we'll start off with, I'm sorry, I said Greg. So Greg, you're up first in this
right.
topic. And so what I'll do is I'll begin to share your image.
All right. Yeah. Coming to you live from Santa Monica, California. Um, Hi, Key. Thanks for this topic again, Mr. Nelson. You come up with some interesting, uh, ways to, approach or to examine the versatility and the scope of photography. And high key, it's you might as well call it an abstract because it's man. As soon as you said that, I thought almost immediately of two movies and one photographic artist, Richard Avedon did a series called In the American West. It wasn't exactly a high key, but he shot these people outdoors with a white background, and it really
Yep.
changed the whole visual impact of the photography. And I thought of The Matrix when he was with Lawrence Fishburne in the Construct, where everything was all white, and
Yeah.
it's like it's
in
like
Morpheus.
yes, thank you. When you one of the exercises we did in film school, we said, okay, now sit and don't say anything and just listen. And you noticed all of the abstract sounds or just random sounds. And they said that one of the most unnatural things is no sound. So if you want to make like a horror film or whatever, cut all the sound out of it, and your brain is like, wait a minute, it'll start reaching for stuff. And for me, it's the same thing with with the high key. And I got this idea from the images I'm showing from Saving Private Ryan. One of their opening shots was through an American flag, and it's sort of, you're used to the flag being rich, deep blue, deep red, and this stark white. Then when you start removing color from stuff, it has a totally different impact visually and emotionally, and all of these other things that visually change when you take color out of it. Something as simple as that, or with like black and white. Black and white is an abstract,
I
and
think it's a great. I think it's a great pick. I like it. It reminds me a lot of the. Sorry,
of what?
I
I'm
was gonna
sorry,
say
you
it
broke up.
reminds me of the Lenny Kravitz American Photo video.
Lenny Kravitz image.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Lenny Kravitz American Woman video.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Well, not to belabor the point. I like the idea of abstracts in general because photography is an abstract. You know, it's like taking a three-dimensional object and turning it into a two-dimensional object. And it's like you're in a car, like I am now, in Los Angeles, and they call it driving, but I'm doing more stopping at this hour than actually driving. So that's where I am. Thank you very much for your time.
That's pretty funny. Yeah. Or stopping than
Okay.
driving.
Okay.
That
Mark,
and
you're up
houses
next.
enough because I just left the dentist, so forgive me. If I'm drooling, just point at the screen and I'll kind of wipe my mouth. Go ahead,
Okay. Mark's up next.
Mark.
I'm hoping. Well, first I want to say we didn't talk about it last week, but because it's still probably too fresh in our minds. But my heart goes out to the folks in Haiti who suffered that horrific earthquake and then a hurricane right after that, after having to live through an assassination of a president. That's just a lot to go through in a few weeks, and I'm just hoping that things work out for that mostly black nation as a black prat photographer. Anyway, having said that, you can put my photo up. When Ken first told us about this idea of high key, I thought, well, I haven't photographed any polar bears recently, so I've got to do something. And then I thought, well, I don't want to do anything from the archive, and I could do some other things. And then I thought of, oh, I know, how do I express white flight? And so this was kind of how I figured to do this. I made a paper airplane and I gave it landing gear, and I gave it a little jetway, and I thought it was really cute until a few days ago when I saw Kabul overrun, and I saw a very similar scene, which was sort of like white flight from Kabul. And, so it's really
White
kind of a weird
light.
thing, where because those Afghanis they've fought, you know, the English, they fought the Russians, they fought the Americans. I mean, at this point, I'm wondering if the West is going to subcontract somebody to get the DNA of Genghis Khan to help them out, because it's just unfortunate, but we've had to go. But we really really needed to be away from there. But it does kind of synthesize with you know the photograph that I had produced. So that's really about it. I thought it was high key, and it's mostly white. Everything's white except for the little faux window on my jetway.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. So, do you see yourself producing more work in a high key form?
Well, it's funny you should ask that. Not so much high key form because I like the high key aesthetic so
Uh-huh.
much, but because it is a way of drafting with light that isn't reliant so much on stark contrasts. I mean,
Yes.
so much of photography, because it has graphic, you know, graph in the middle, we
Mhm.
often talk in terms of, yin and yang and black and white. And, we juxtapose quite often stark whites with, you know, blacks that are less than 10%. And we applaud ourselves quite often because we've, created a checkerboard pattern of some type. But this high key aesthetic allows you to really think about the subtleties of the upper levels of the grayscale.
Yeah.
And depending on the acuity of your lighting or your sensor at this point, or your film processing in the old days, you would be able to really nuance or finesse those upper tones to get a really beautiful image. I mean, I've cheated a little bit because, I used cling wrap to make a to make safety glass. But
Hmm.
otherwise, you know, it's neat.
Okay.
I'd have to come up with a series of topics to do this with, though.
Okay. I got you. Okay. Moving
I'd
on to
like
me.
to see it.
You
But
like the
go
what?
ahead. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see Mark's vision with, different high key topics.
Yeah,
Like it.
I think as that's sort of the reason why I brought it up, because it's not usual a usual technique to do in a standard everyday photographic situation, whether that's in studio or whether that's on the street. So moving on to me, I'm going to share the image that I brought to demonstrate how I've approached it before, and this is the image that I have. It's an image from 2008, and usually when you do in street photography, I would suppose that in order to do what it is for high key, which is to minimize the effects of contrast and dark tones, you really have to almost shoot either in a snow scene or in a sand scene. And yeah, I think if you're relegated to those two, then you have a better control over high key than if you were to just try and nuance it by film processing or exposure control or a
Or
combination of both.
court, handball court,
I'm sorry?
and a handball court.
Yeah, and a handball court. Yeah. So any of those situations, yeah, the handball court would be a great place too on a mostly well, yeah, on a sunny day. But and again, I as I look through my archive, I realize that I don't have many circumstances in which I've gone through the experience of visualizing a high key image for street. But this is one of those that I did with the advent of course, digital photographs and the ability to adjust contrast and tonalities at the stroke of a slide button or slide rule. It becomes kind of easier to do to create a thought process as to how to maybe approach high key lighting photographically if you're out in the street. So here's my approach to that. This was done in 2008, and it's a film photograph, so it's kind of interesting that I haven't really done it that much in terms of digital. No.
High key lighting is well, because for me, I like abstract, and I mean, like I can always go back to that Matrix scene where you turn everything white, and then what's left?
Yeah.
Your depth perception is gone. Your uh, most of your visual uh, cues, as far as space and dimension and even time, are gone. And I like the idea of an abstract vision. So yeah, right. That's spot on.
Yeah, and also all the emotional things, the emotional undertones and context that goes with a high key image versus
Exactly.
a very contrasty image or dark image, right? That thing,
Right.
lightness versus darkness, and all that comes into play when you're doing this. So when people are going to view a high key image, it's yes, it might veer on the abstract, but it's also going to have a different emotional reaction than if it were a contrastier or darker photograph.
I mean,
So much
I like
with the
it a lot.
zone system. I know it drive Ansel crazy.
Well, that's because he liked this whole zone system where he wanted to make sure, he represented the whole tonal scale mostly, usually.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's a function of the materials he was working with, right? I mean, if you're working with Tri-X, right? I mean, you guys know this. What's the big challenge with Tri-X? The big challenge with Tri-X isn't getting
Keeping it from blowing out.
right. That's not the big challenge. The big challenge is getting tone in the shadows while keeping the highlights from blowing out.
yeah, yeah,
So for Ansel, it was really about getting a lot of dark grays. But because 90% of our viewing is done through these screens, we always get to see a zillion tones of the darkest grays. And for us, the challenge is now bringing down, recovering, right? They call it recovery, recovering those upper tones so that we get the subtlety.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so we're running almost to our point of where we have to close. So I want to close out by saying, hopefully, this has given viewers some ideas about creative processes in photographing using a high key aesthetic. It may not be exactly what we've showed you here, but if you Google high key lighting on the internet, you'll find a lot of references there. And of course, I'll link some references below that'll make it easier for those who are looking at to find, because it may not be that easy. Mark, anything to close out your comments?
Yeah, before the fall cobble, I said, I was going to do this thing about white flight, basically because it was nostalgic, because there was a whole thing that we used to grow up with the idea that white flight was this horrible thing that happened where people would just run out of the neighborhoods. But I noticed just before Afghanistan fell that all of a sudden we have found ourselves in situations where gentrification, which is really code for influx of affluent white people moving into these previously 90% black communities, has been the new part of being afraid of white movement. So it's an interesting change. And I thought my little white flight photograph would be sort of a retro deal. I had no idea it would be so on point that week. So,
Okay.
that's
Great.
life. And I hope all those people are safe as well. I mean, it's just a curious coincidence, but that's about it.
Okay. Greg?
Keep shooting. Get as many tools in your photographic arsenal as, or photographic toolbox as you can. Learn how to, low key lighting is fun. Shoot with a candle. There's a challenge there. Or do some night sky shooting, which is another, astrophotography. Totally different, skill set. Um, but with digital has opened up a lot of stuff that you could do, and just explore it. Learn your camera, learn your techniques. Explore. Like the internet. Look at all the stuff that can be done photographically, and don't limit yourself to any one thing. Just have fun with it. High key is fun. It's a different emotional experience. Photography. Is good photography is usually emotional. It impacts you. Your human condition. The way you show people in different situations. It normally evokes. We're emotional beings. It should evoke an emotional response. And high key is another way of putting that on a photographic canvas. Keep shooting. That's all I got.
Okay. So we've added to your arsenal of ideas creatively. And with that, we'll see you next time on Three Black Pratt Grads. I'm Kenneth Nelson with Mark Skinner and Greg Cleghorn. Have a good
Boop,
night,
boop,
good
boop.
morning, or good afternoon, whichever applies to you. Take care. We'll see you next time.